Yeah. Good evening, everyone. It's a real pleasure addressing you this evening. I'm David Chalmers, and I am the chair of the Federal International Relations Committee of the LibDems. I have for the past 4 years, and up until last week, been the chair of the LibDem European group, which, as it suggests, endeavours to foster a greater understanding of all things European, European politics amongst our party members, and to a certain extent develop relations with our sister parties. And I stood down from that role as I'd been elected just at the beginning of the year, as I said, to chair the party's Federal International Relations Committee. And it's basically which brings together and coordinates all our international work. And I mean, it's a great honour that my party has put its trust in me to undertake this role. Being LibDems, it's not a position you're appointed to. Back in the autumn, we had internal elections, and every single member of the party has a vote, all 70,000. They elect 6 members of the party to be their representatives in international issues, to deal with the party leadership. And then from amongst the 6, I was elected, as I said, a few weeks ago as the chair. And it's, as I said, it's a great honour to be able to do that. It's given me a mandate, and it's a recognition of how important internationalism is to the LibDems. I'm a LibDem because I'm an internationalist, and I believe that we work better together when working together with others. And for that very reason alone, Brexit for me was one of the greatest tragedies ever to befallen our country. And it was made worse by the decision that drove people to leave. It was by, as we know, it was based on lies and deceit. And in some ways, we stand here now facing one of the greatest threats to our liberal democracies and the way of life since the Second World War, with the war in Ukraine. I will repeat what I said 7 years ago, that the only person who will be happy at us leaving the EU is Vladimir Putin. We know that Russian money helped the Leave campaign. We only don't know to what extent. And through our relations, and I'll talk about this later, through our connections with our sister parties, we know that this has been going on and is still going on throughout Europe. We know about Ukraine, and I'll talk about that later. But that's why, for me, it is so important, this work that we do with our sister parties. But I'm here tonight to talk about how the LibDems engage with those sister parties around the world, and in particular in Europe. Recognising that internationalism is at the core of our party, we strive to maintain and develop strong links with our sister parties globally through our participation in Liberal International and our membership of the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe, ALDE. Now, ALDE, you've probably heard of, it's the group that we belong to in the European Parliament, when we were in the European Parliament, and is now in a coalition with En Marche, which is called the Renew Group. But it is ALDE to which we are members, and it ensures that post-Brexit, our voice, that's the voice of the UK, is continued to be heard and respected on the world stage.
I was expecting a great big massive list though.
Hello? Over the past 3 years since we left the EU, all of the other British political parties have lost their regular contact with the EU. Our offices, our MEPs in Brussels have gone. And that also goes for the whole of the British government. And what for over 40 years, as David was explaining, was shaped by regular dialogue and just being able to meet with fellow Europeans has gone. And I don't think the impact of that can be overstated. It hit the LibDems too. But we have managed to conduct a regular dialogue. I mean, Liberal International includes parties from around the world, Africa, Asia, Latin America, and Canada. And we do meet regularly. Last summer in Sofia, and in May, I shall be going to Canada to meet with our counterparts, the Liberal Party in Canada. But tonight, as I said, I focus on ALDE. I'm happy to take more global questions later. ALDE is the European family for liberal and democratic parties, and it consists of parties inside and outside the EU. We also have parties from Norway, Switzerland, and Iceland, and we have just started to have a regular dialogue with them to look at how it's like for us as countries outside the EU and how we can actually deal with our big neighbour. It's really informative for us to hear. One of the things that our Norwegian counterparts were telling us recently, that they have never actually opposed a single law from the EU. And they look at us and say, if you go into the single market, would you be prepared to actually accept that position? So it's actually something which is helping to craft our idea of the future sort of relationship that we want with the EU. We also have Golos, one of the Ukrainian parties in Audi, and also Zelensky's party, Servant of the People. And the latter joined just last year. And it gives us a unique insight into the Ukrainian war. And it did so leading up to it. We were able to talk to them about what was happening within Ukraine, Russia. Then we had dialogue about the pipeline bringing gas to Germany from Russia, and managed to get the FDP, who was also part of our party, to actually change their position and oppose that pipeline. So again, that sort of dialogue is really important for us. My predecessor, Phil Bennion, accompanied Kira Rudik, who's the leader of Golos. Many of you may have seen her on TV. She's become very much a spokesperson for Ukraine, on a visit to our liberal parties in Africa. And we actually managed to help them to change their position on Ukraine for greater support for Ukraine. And we've seen, it's one of the great things of being able to cooperate with them. And inside the EU, we have the FDP, as I mentioned. I'm leading a delegation of LibDems over to Berlin next month. We should be meeting with their foreign affairs and climate emergency teams. It's very important for us to sort of get to know our sister parties. Mark Rutte's party in the Netherlands, Fianna Fáil in Ireland, and our MPs in this Liberal group in the European Parliament, which, as David has mentioned, was really critical for us to be able to have that dialogue. That has gone, and so we are finding other ways at the moment to be able to do this. Audi meets regularly, so we have a council meeting usually in the latter end of the year. Last December it was in Bratislava. And then we have a larger Congress meeting, which last year was in June in Dublin, and in May will be in Stockholm. And we, again, as a party, elect delegates to that delegation to Audi. And I, as the chair of the Federal International Relations Committee, chair the delegation. And we are able to engage with parties. It's a networking opportunity. We meet with leaders from other parties, including prime ministers, ministers, MEPs. It's a really important sort of opportunity for us to be able to sort of connect with one another. But there's also a lot of work that gets done, and we are able to bring motions to those meetings. In Bratislava, we brought motions regarding the women's rights in Iran, supporting the protests in China. And we as a party have been doing an awful lot around LGBT rights. We know there are issues within Europe, certainly Eastern Central Europe, on respecting those. When Zelensky's party actually came forward and met with us because they were applying to become a member of the party, I actually asked their prime minister, what is your position on LGBT plus rights? They responded that they do have problems, but they would like us to be able to help them. And from that, we've actually developed a program called the Rainbow Platform, which is there to support our sister parties with regards to LGBT rights, helping candidates, supporting membership. I was in Krakow last year, working with many really senior leaders of our sister parties. And we also were instructive, and we were one of the leaders we put together the Dublin Declaration, where 43 of our sister parties have now signed that right across Europe, supporting LGBT rights across Europe. So having this dialogue with them, we are able to actually have some influence on what is happening in those countries. We work together on protecting the environment, and thinking, on trade, on right across the board, on all sort of issues. And in fact, I'm a member at the moment of a working group with members from all our sister parties looking at trying to develop a sort of common defence policy. Now, obviously, it doesn't, that we all have our own particular areas, but it gives us a sort of a general consensus where some areas we might be able to work together and find areas that we support. Certainly, though, as I said, on human rights, that's been a really important point for us. So it really is one of the strengths I found of us being able to connect in and have this dialogue with our sister parties. We also invite over members of our sister parties to speak at our conferences. I should be hosting a debate at our spring conference looking at local government and how we can connect with them. I've been myself over to a couple of years ago to the Democracy Festival in Denmark, talking about how we as a party were dealing with diversity and strengthening diversity, certainly in rural areas. So we have a lot of cooperation with one another, and during elections that teams come over and help us, and we send teams over to help in their elections as well. So I suppose hopefully this evening what I've tried to demonstrate is how important this is for us, the international relations are to my party. And coming back to Brexit, it is through them that we have come to the hard realization that joining is not something that is going to happen anytime soon. We want better relations with the European Union, and the European Union want better relations with us. They all wish that, like us, that Brexit had never happened. And then David said that they miss us. Every single time I meet with our members from our sister parties, they say exactly the same. They respected our integrity. They respected our critical thought. Yes, our sense of humour and our friendship that we were there. And so it can't be underestimated, as I said, just how bad Brexit has been for us and for them. But one thing that they say to us is that we need to strengthen our democracy. We have to get our house in order before we can even think of developing a sort of relationship with them, which many of us, I think, would welcome. But reconnecting and normalizing relations is absolutely on the cards. But we need to go through this to being able to develop the relations with our European counterparts. And what I'm concerned about is that doesn't seem to be there in the same level with the Conservatives and with the Labour Party as we do with the LibDems. But hopefully, with a change of government, that we will be able to see, steps being taken to bring us closer. And I am confident and hopeful that we as a party, with our internationalism, will be able to bring a really important aspect to that dialogue and helping us to reconnect, because it is going to take us a long time to redevelop those connections that we had and were once part of normal life in this country. So that's, hopefully you have some questions on things, and that gives you a bit of an idea of where we are as a party and where I, in particular, my own passion on the international front. So thank you.
Thank you, David. Lovely. Could I ask a couple of questions, David, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
So one thought, as you were describing the role that you did and the places that you go to and the people that you meet, both within Europe and further afield,